Just want to just mention one other thing. If anybody wants to speak, there are blue cards located in the back. If you want to fill out your name and the topic you want to talk about, and that way we'll make sure that you come up to speak on the topic you want to talk about. Si algún padre necesita micrófonos para oír, con gusto, aquí los tenemos si necesitan ayuda. If not, we're going to start. Everybody has it in? Are we good to go? Okay. We'll call the order of the study session of the Board of Education agenda August 28, 2019 at 5:33 p.m. May I have the Pledge of Allegiance by Deborah Stark, Assistant Superintendent of Education Services, please?
Hand on your heart and begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Dr. Stark. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Governing Board Member Garcia is ill and out on bereavement. Governing Board Member De Leon.
Present.
Governing Board Member Hanson.
Here.
Governing Board Member Cuarenta is not here. Governing Board Member Gomez.
Here. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
Governing Board Member Cuarenta.
Here.
Okay.
We'll let her get situated. Let me know when you're ready. Thank you very much. Now we're going to approve the study session agenda for August 28, 2019. May I have a motion to approve the study session agenda of August 28, 2019?
I'll move.
That was Sonia De Leon made the motion. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Vivian Hanson made the second. Any questions, any comments? None so. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0, motion passed. Now we're going to the hearing section. Persons wishing to address the board should fill out a card located on the table by the door and submit the completed card to the secretary. Speakers will be called in sequence during the hearing section, which is limited to 1 hour, and each speaker to one presentation of 3 minutes, unless the board wishes to waive the time limit. Those who have a group concern are encouraged to select a spokesperson to address the board. Persons wishing to address the board on a specific agenda item at the time of the item is under discussion are limited to 3 minutes each and will be called to speak following the staff comments and prior to the board's discussion and taking action. So we do have 2 blue cards. The first one would be Daisy, and she wants to talk about special ed, educación especial. So Daisy es la primera que va a hablar. Pase al...
Buenas noches a todos.
Let me, yeah.
Un minuto para que le pueda.
I'm going to ask her a question.
Sorry.
¿Usted va a hablar para usted misma o para un grupo?
Para un grupo.
Okay.
Yo represento un
Okay.
grupo de padres.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
let me
yes, thank you.
make that change.
Como va a hablar por un grupo es más, poquito más tiempo. She's actually going to speak for a group instead of an individual. An individual gets 3 minutes, but a group gets 20 minutes. So we're going to change the clock for her.
Okay. Yo represento un grupo de padres.
Espera. Tiene que cambiar minutos. Gracias.
We'll turn it on right now.
Is the green little thing on?
Yes.
Yes, it's on. Por favor, si puede hablar un poquito más cerquitas que no se le oye. Oh, she's going to be the interpreter, so.
Yes.
Okay. Buenas noches a todos. Good evening, everyone. Yo represento un grupo de padres.
We can't hardly hear you, so if you can speak closer. What's the young lady's name? Anna. Sorry, Anna. Thank you.
De diferentes escuelas.
She's here to represent different parents from different school sites.
Nosotros hemos observado en diferentes escuelas
They've observed in different sites, different school sites,
que hay maestros y asistentes
that there's teachers and instructional aides
que se ocupan en otras cosas, no en el cuidado de los niños.
that they don't pay, that they're not in charge of the students, but in other stuff.
La observación de nosotros ha sido que varios de ellos siempre están en su teléfono celular,
They're either on their phone,
en su computadora.
on their computers.
Hace muchos años yo me acerqué aquí a personas diferentes pidiendo ayuda.
Several years ago, I came to the district to ask for help.
Le presenté a unas preocupaciones de nosotros los padres con estos niños.
I presented different problems with students.
Yo pensé que al presentar eso nosotros íbamos a tener otra respuesta a esas preguntas.
I thought that bringing those problems here, I was going to have different answers.
Nosotros estamos aquí porque somos la voz de educación especial.
We as parents are here because we are the voice of those students with special needs.
Cuando un padre se acerca a diferentes maestros, personas capacitadas en la área de educación especial,
When us as parents come to teachers for special ed,
lo hacemos porque estamos viendo en ellos el soporte que necesitan.
because we're seeing that they can support us with the needs that the students need.
El distrito necesita reconocer
The district needs to recognize
que estos niños aprenden de diferente manera,
that these children, they learn in different ways.
pero el distrito no está tomando cartas en el asunto
But the district is not paying attention to these needs,
y nosotros no somos tomados en cuenta. Nosotros los padres no somos tomados en cuenta.
and them as parents have gotten together to bring this up to the district.
Yo quiero decirles que nosotros somos sus familias también.
She's here to let them know, to let you guys know that they're the families of those special needs, of all the special needs students.
Yo digo que somos su familia porque nosotros somos residentes de Paramount,
And I say we are the family because we are residents of the city of Paramount.
pertenecemos a este distrito
We belong to this district.
y cuando nosotros nos acercamos a ustedes no lo estamos haciendo simple y sencillamente por obtener servicios para nuestros hijos.
When we come to you, we do it only because we need those needs for our students,
Sino porque estamos viendo la necesidad que está pasando en cada uno de estos niños.
because we see the necessities of the students, the needs of these students.
Nosotros los padres
Us as parents,
les queremos decir a ustedes que no cuenten a nuestros hijos como un número más para la estadística de los fondos.
we don't want you to count the students as another statistic for funds.
Nosotros queremos
We want
suplicarles a ustedes
to beg you
de que por favor
to please
que se enfoquen también en educación especial, que no lo hagan a un lado.
to focus on special ed. Don't put the students aside.
Porque si estos niños en este momento no están aprendiendo cuál es el futuro que les espera afuera después que salgan del distrito.
Because if these students don't learn right now, what's their future going to be when they leave the district?
Gracias a cada uno de ustedes por escucharnos. Detrás de mí somos cientos de padres con las mismas preocupaciones.
I thank you for listening to me right today, but behind me, there's lots of parents with the same worries about what I brought today.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daisy. Next will be Gerald Cerda, General.
Good evening, President, board
Mr. Cerda?
members, Superintendent.
Hold on, I need to reset the timer to 3 minutes.
I'll take 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, I would like to thank Daisy and the community that's here tonight to talk about special education. I have walked the campuses when we have attended some of the special meetings, the IEPs for our son here. He graduated now, and we did notice that students were in rooms on their phones instead of getting academic learning, academic structure. So there is a flaw in the system here. And I just want to piggyback on that, but what was mentioned. There are other issues like the SELPA meeting, the annual SELPA meeting that Paramount didn't get any notice because somebody forgot to pass out the flyers. It's once a year. It's an important meeting. It's done by LACO, and somebody dropped the ball at the Paramount Unified School District. So yes, as parents with special needs students, there's a lot of room for improvement, and we do need to pick that up. Otherwise, where are our kids going to be? I did ask the case manager about transitional, and what is transitional? And I was told to look it up on Google, okay? That's our case manager with special education. I feel there are issues because I did talk to some teachers that have been here for years, and they've been requesting full-time jobs, yet they're part-time. How are we going to get qualified teachers if we just have them as part-time employees? There's a lot of talent out there, and I think they deserve full-time tenure. They deserve benefits just like any other teacher that has met those requirements. We need to look at that to keep those teachers with those qualifications. And I do have some questions. I would like to know what Paramount Unified School District has in place to evaluate students who show learning challenges. There may be a broad array of students' needs that require specific IEPs or 504s, but what does Paramount have in place? How does the district work with Regional Center, SELPA, and with doctor evaluations to work on IEPs and 504s and move those students forward? How does a nonverbal student who is denied sign language services from Regional Center increase his academic learning with Paramount? You know, these are questions. You know, I talked to a lady and she said her son uses an iPad to communicate with staff. He should be learning sign language. You know, iPads go down and maybe the other person may not have the time to look at an iPad. This is a child that is 6, 7 years old. You know, he shouldn't be denied sign language services. And so I do want to thank all the parents that are here that are Spanish speakers, and I do welcome them to attend more meetings, not just tonight. And also, parents are passionate about their students' education. So there shouldn't be, and I'm going to say again, there shouldn't be any persona non gratas on parents that show concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you, everyone. Now we're going to information items. This item is intended to keep the board informed on various district business matters that do not require formal action by the board. It will be general services, special education, and community schools initiative. Staff will represent to the Board of Education on special education and community school initiatives. Yes, I'm sorry. Turn it over to you, Dr. Burris.
Okay. Good evening, board members. Madam President, this evening, staff is very pleased to share with you at your request a special study session on special education services in our district, as well as a wonderful new initiative that we are starting this year in partnership with LACO. And it will provide free mental health services for our students, and we look forward to sharing with you about that particular program, what that's going to look like, et cetera. I do have a few things I'd like to share with you. First of all, I'm sure you may have received this with a Wednesday report recently. Does it look familiar?
No, I got it online.
Not to,
No?
not to me.
Okay, we're gonna. Acela believes she sent it, but you will receive it. It is actually a report by the California School Boards Association. They commissioned a special education task force in 2015 to do some research on special education and across the state. And I read the whole thing last night because it's so informative. But and of course, these are things that some of us know, but it explains it more further, and it also explains the research behind it and what the California School Board Association is supporting. So I will send you another copy home, but I highly recommend this because they did a wonderful job with it. I wanted to share with you, board members, that before I introduce Dr. Garcia, our special education director, that as you're aware, our district strategic plan has 4 focus areas, and one of them is high quality teaching and learning, of which all special education students have a right to receive. When the Strategic Planning Committee met in 2017 to develop the district's plan, we researched best educational practices to support our special education students. And additionally, we pledged to continue to support those practices that were already in place in our district and monitor their effectiveness for educating our special ed students. For example, one of the strategies of the strategic plan on page 19 states that we are committed to continuing to support co-teaching as a strategy for ensuring students with disabilities are educated in the least restrictive environment. The least restrictive environment for a special ed student is a legal requirement. We have gone further in our district to support that, least restrictive environment by having 2 teachers in a classroom under one of the programs that we offer called co-teaching. And that is where we have 1 special education teacher and 1 general education teacher working together, where we have a mix of students learning, and they have the benefit of both teachers in the classroom. This is a program that not all districts have, mainly because it's costly and because you have another teacher in the classroom. But our district has been committed to co-teaching in up to grades 10 for all of our students whose IEP identifies them as qualifying to be in a co-teaching inclusive environment. So I was really pleased to read last night that the Special Education Task Force commissioned by CSBA found in their research that students with disabilities that receive education in inclusive settings, in other words, they're mixed with general education students, are likely to reach higher academic achievement. And it states that this may be in part because higher expectations are associated with higher achievement. And they found that educating all students together has been shown to produce better outcomes for students without the disabilities as well. So having a mix of students in a classroom that have disabilities and those that don't have disability is beneficial for both groups, is what they found. I was so pleased to read that. We also set a goal in our strategic plan on page 20 to decrease overall suspension, truancy, and chronic absentee rates for all students, and ensure that no student group is overrepresented in them. In other words, we wanted to make sure by monitoring data that students with disabilities in our district as a group was not being suspended or absent more than other groups of students. So we committed to implement a few behavioral programs to help students, and we've been providing professional development for teachers, both special ed and general education students. For example, one is called Positive Behavioral Interventions and Support, PBIS as it's called. We have a program called Restorative Practices. Another one you've heard about a lot recently called Capturing Kids' Hearts. A new social emotional learning curriculum for K-8 that you recently approved as a board. And we continue with the Safe and Civil Schools program that has been in place for a few years. Our district is committed to our special education students. We have over 1,400 students. I learned last night the state of California has about 775,000 students with disabilities. About 12% of our population of students in our district have disabilities. So we're committed to them and their education. And with that, we look forward to sharing information. Dr. Garcia, would you come forward and begin the presentation?
All right. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Perez, our executive cabinet, our colleagues, and our family members out here in the audience. Thank you for attending. Just want to go over the purpose of tonight's presentation. We're going to highlight some of the content in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Also, we're going to discuss a little bit about our continuum of services and the programs we offer here for our students with disabilities within our school district. And then we're going to talk about a little bit about what we're doing as a district to increase the opportunities for students with special needs to be able to participate in general education settings, and then some outcomes that have been evident so far.
May I ask you a question? Dr. Garcia, right? If we have questions, would you want us to ask then and there or wait to the end of the presentation?
Because there is a lot of information that kind of leads to itself to some other areas, if you could wait until the end, because it's a big picture that you're going to look at. And so it might be a little bit, it might be answered in the next couple of slides afterwards. Okay. So before I even get into the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we even get to this point with our students in terms of looking at the eligibility for special education. Before we even look at eligibility, we have what in general education, what is called student study team process. That was what it was referred to in the past. Now you may hear terms like response to intervention team, or you might hear multi-tiered support system. And those are all pre-referral. Those are all a referral process where our general education teachers will look at the student progress, and the students that they're concerned about that are making limited progress, either academically or behavior, they will bring those cases up to their teams. The teams then discuss different interventions at the tier 1, tier 2, and then tier 3. When they looked at different interventions and they've tried them for a period of time, and they're collecting data the whole time to see if there's progress being made. If the team feels like, you know what, this is limited progress, let's see if there's something else that the student may have special needs. Let's see if there's some criteria that they meet for eligibility for special education. Then they're referred for psychoeducational evaluation. Keep in mind that this is a team approach. Even when with the referral over to the RTI or the multi-tier support system process, the parents are always included in that. They're part of the meetings, they're part of the discussion with interventions. Okay. So once the referral is done, what we do is we do an evaluation. If the student is found to be eligible for special education, they're protected under the Disabilities Education Act. And what the federal law ensures is that it's a free and appropriate public education available to those eligible children with disabilities. It also ensures that there's special education and related services to those students. When we're looking at school districts, is that our responsibility to provide those services for children ages 3 to 21. Okay. All right. So a little bit of background here on the purpose of the Disabilities Education Act is that all children, again, have that free and appropriate public education. Also, that we address their individual needs, their unique needs, and prepare them for future education, employment, independent living. Also, the purpose of the Disabilities Education Act is that it protects the rights of the children with disabilities as well as with their parents. Okay. And another point to remind you is that this law also gives the educators and parents the tools to improve the educational results for children with disabilities by supporting overall systems efforts, activities. It also coordinates the research. It also, part of the law is preparation for the teachers, for the personnel, the specialists that work with these students. Also technical assistance, support, and technology, and all of that is covered under that Educational Act. Dr. Bettis kind of touched already on the least restrictive environment, abbreviated as LRE, which is a major part of the Disabilities Education Act. And what the least restrictive environment says is that we must, to a maximum extent as appropriate for those children, is that we must try for them to have opportunities to be educated with peers who are non-disabled. And Dr. Bettis already talked about one of the programs we offer here in the district, the co-teaching and the benefits that go with them. Okay? Thank you. So what is this is that the law says that special classes, separate schooling, or removing of the children with disabilities from the regular environment occurs only if that nature or the severity of their disability is such that we cannot serve them in regular classes. They cannot be achieved without the use of supplementary aids and services. Okay. So in special education, we have a continuum of services. If you see the pyramid, it starts off very broad and general, is that you have a general education classroom, but basically without any support, okay? A majority of our children enrolled here in this district fall into this category. Then another level of service is that you may have general education classroom. Now you provide some types of accommodations. Remember how I mentioned that through the referral process, there's the tier 1, tier 2 interventions that happen. That's usually about this level you're seeing the tier 2 interventions that take place. Now, under special education, you start, if a child's found eligible, you may serve them through a push-in model, meaning that the specialist or whoever the special education personnel is, they may go into that general classroom and provide that service right there and then in that classroom. You may have the co-taught model that we talked about already, with the general and special education teachers both in the same classroom. You may have a general education classroom as their placement, and then you may provide special education pull-out services. Either they get pulled out for maybe some academic instruction, pulled out for speech and language services. So it all depends on their individual needs, okay? Also, there's the special education with mainstreaming that comes the next level after pull-out. In the special education class, then what we see is a special education teacher in that classroom as the one that delivers the instruction. We also may have a special day class student that has mainstreaming where they go into a general education classroom for some subject areas, okay? The special day class then could be without mainstreaming. That's a little bit more restrictive. You can go on to a county program, special day class in a county program. We have that for some of our students who are deaf, hard of hearing, or visually impaired with mobility issues. Also then the more restrictive is a non-public school. And you've seen some of those board items come through for those students that have not been able to be successful in our special day classes, then move on to non-public school setting. And then we go into a residential, and then the most restrictive then would be a home instruction setting. Okay. Now, all of this continuum of service is really determined by each student that's eligible for special education. There is an individualized education plan that's developed by that team. And they are the ones that review the assessment, the success, the monitoring, and everything. The team includes, of course, the parents. It includes the special education personnel, includes the general education, and, of course, school site administration. Okay. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a snapshot of here in Paramount, how our programs aligned with the continuum of services. Some of our students that are receiving special education services receive them through designated instructional services. These are areas such as adaptive physical education. They may receive some assistance with assistive technology. Some may receive behavior intervention services. Some may receive counseling and guidance. Some may receive some mental health services, occupational therapy, or speech and language. Those are written into their IEP, and the frequency and everything is part of that. Also, keep in mind that the IEP, at least annually, is reviewed and revised as needed. So the teachers also have benchmarks where they're monitoring progress. There's progress reports that go home to the parents, phone calls that go to the parents on how those children are doing on their IEP goals and objectives. The IEP goals and objectives are developed by the team based on the student needs. Okay. Oh, and I wanted to acknowledge two specialists that we have here. We have two of our very dedicated speech and language pathologists here this evening, Ms. Reed and Ms. Donahue, if you could just raise your hand. So these are some of the personnel that provide services out in our school district. All right. We have specialized academic instruction, and we deliver this in different ways throughout the district. And it really is based on the student's needs and what that IEP team determines as the program placement. So when we talk about the Resource Specialist Program, it's abbreviated at RSP. You hear that quite often. This is where it's in a general education curriculum with some accommodations. These students are diploma bound, and it is in a general education classroom. And you see the schools that are listed there. We have an RSP services throughout all of our school sites in the district. Moving to the special day class, we have students that may have mild to moderate academic or developmental delays. They can be served in a special day class, which is a general education curriculum that's still followed, but there may be modifications to that curriculum depending on their needs. These students are diploma bound. They get services through the general education, maybe in a co-teaching model. They also receive services in a special education model. And as you see here, we have some of our elementary schools that have that, as well as some of the middle schools that have the special day class, mild to moderate. And we have the West Campus and the senior campus. We also then have a special day class for students that may have moderate to severe delays now in their development, in their academic learning. What they receive is an alternate or life skills curriculum. These students are certificate of completion bound, and they receive their special education, usually in a special education classroom with access to general education classrooms. And you see that we have this program at Lincoln, Los Cerritos, and Alondra. And then for our secondary level, we have it at West Campus, Senior Campus, and the Adult Transition Program. The district also has a behavior support focused classrooms. These are general education curriculum with modifications. They are diploma bound. They're special education classrooms with some access to general education, but these classes have specific behavior supports and services for these students. And we have this at the K-8, we have this program for Alondra Middle School, and for the secondary at Buena Vista High School. Another program that we have here in the district is the Autism Focus. It's a general education curriculum, again with modifications. These students are diploma bound. They're in a special education class with some access to general ed, and they also have a specific behavior supports or behavior system in place to help them. And we have this program at Hollydale. Okay. I want to talk to you about a program that's unique, that's different than some of the other programs that we have throughout the district, and this is our Paramount Adult Transition Program. This program is at the adult school campus. It's for students then who are 18 to 22 years of age. These are the students who have now earned their certificate of completion, and after being in a moderate to severe high school classroom. The curriculum is different in that they're now focusing a lot on their life skills and functional academic curriculum. They have a wonderful workability program where there's partnerships between community businesses and their adult transition staff. And those students go out actually into the community and they do some work. It all depends on their needs and their skills level. There is a small grant that helps us with paying for them for that work out in the community. And then they go back to the class in the afternoon. They share their experiences and then they work on some other skills to help them with their adult living. We also offer a community-based instruction. This is where these students go out into the community. They go to the banks, they go to the grocery stores. They learn how to pretty much manage their money, how to go grocery shopping. They talk about it in class. They balance checkbooks, all of that to help them. Independent living skills. I don't know how many of you have gone to the adult school and you've seen that mock apartment. That's where they practice some of their independent living skills. And it all depends on the different levels they are. Some students in that mock apartment may be able to write out a recipe and actually go to the grocery store as part of their community-based instruction, go back and cook the meal. Some other students are just learning them basically on where the dishes would go once they're done using them. So it all depends on their needs. Then also this program makes a connection to community resources. They work very closely with the regional center. So when these students do leave our school district, there's definitely some support services still intact. Okay. When you talk about curriculum and instruction for special education, for our students that are in the resource specialist program or special day class with the mild moderate and the autism and behavior support classes, it's the general education curriculum that's modified and accommodations are made for those students. So the curriculum is either supplemented according to their IEP goals. Now we do have a separate curriculum, like I mentioned briefly. It's used for those students that are in the moderate to severe classes, and this curriculum is called Attainment. And what it does is basically looks at the academic skills, but it puts a spin on it with some life skills learning. So then the students learn math and literacy in the context of what they would use in the real world, in the real life. The opportunities we provide for students with special needs in general education. We talked already about our co-teaching. It began years ago, about 9 years ago, with our resource specialist program in the middle and high school, and now it includes the students in our special day class for the mild to moderate. We also this year are piloting our inclusion preschool class at Wards Elementary, and this is taught by 2 preschool teachers, one special education, one general education. And the students are both general ed and students with special needs in that classroom. A little bit of our data that shows the early outcomes. So last year, the middle school started doing co-teaching with the students from both the RSP and the special day classes. And what we've seen in our English language grades from second semester is that, and I don't know if you could see it very well, it's not showing up right there, but there was an increase in the English language arts grades, is that, let me pull it out for mine. It went in 2017-18, at the end of that school year, went from 74.7% of passing grades through A through C grades. And then at the end of last year, the spring, it went up to 79.6% of those students were now getting passing A through C grades. Now, the gains are even higher when you look at math in the next point. In math, if you look at their math scores at the end of 17-18, they were 69.9% of the students were getting passing A through C grades. But if you look at last year in the spring, after having co-teaching experiences in both English and math, now you're seeing them at 84.1% increase. So of students that have the AC grade passage. So that's very promising. We have gotten feedback from some of our staff on their co-teaching experience, and we have one teacher that put it very nicely in that she believes that this has helped because it puts both the general and special education educators in a collaborative mindset to meet the individual needs of the students we serve. Also, in the past, we've gotten some quotes from our students. One student in 10th grade said, having 2 teachers is better because they both explain and put more understanding in the lesson. We also had a 6th grade student that said they felt like they learned more because they were in a co-talk class. The special education department also provides support for schools. We've designed some professional development for our teachers and for our specialists. We do curriculum development, and then remember the general education curriculum sometimes has to be modified, made accommodations, and there is a separate curriculum for our moderate to severe. So our wonderful program specialists that are right out here in the audience, some of them, you can raise your hand, and our program administrators that are right out there, they help with all of that. They also provide program support, meaning the different programs that we have through the district, they help them with making sure that the students' needs are being met. There's also a technical support aspect to what we provide for the schools in that the IEPs have a lot of different data and requirements that need to be completed, and we have to make sure that we capture that and that we're entering it correctly in our database so that the state has the most accurate and current information on our students. Okay, and we provide the support again, like I said, with our program administrators, program specialists, we have behavior intervention specialists, and we also have school nurses to help us with that, on top of all the other special education staff that you have at school sites. For professional development, we have brought in 2 Teach consultants, which is an organization that they're experts in the area of co-teaching. The teachers receive 2 days of training in co-teaching, and then the team with the administration and the consultants go out and do classroom visits, and then they come back and bring that feedback and they reflect on it, and they develop their next steps. Also, our instructional assistants, this year we're rolling out more training on behavior strategies, and we started that in August, and we will continue to do that throughout the year, okay, along with some follow-up trainings. What our next steps in special education is that we want to look at our preschool inclusion class that we're starting this year. We want to monitor and assess what's working there by surveying the teachers and the parents. We also want to look at our co-teaching in secondary, since it's been taking place for some time now. We want to analyze the courses that are offered, see how those students are doing in terms of their outcomes, which is grades and behavior. And then we also want to look at a 2-year plan to address and look at and examine the student behavior or support needs that may be out there in our school sites, and then start doing a plan for professional development for both our special and general education staff. Okay. All right, any questions? A lot of information, sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. So now we'll go to our board members and have a discussion, or if you have any questions to ask Dr. Garcia.
And we did receive, Madam President, the questions that were submitted, and she's prepared to answer them. Do you have them in front of you also?
Yes, and I think I answered some of them. I think some of them have to do with the referral process. So again, I touched on that being that it's the RTI, or the multi-tier support system, that happens in general education before their students even evaluated for special
Another
education.
question was how many K-8 students we have with autism that we serve?
So at the end of last year, the data that we had at the end of 18-19, we had served 1,984 students in special education throughout the year.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry. 1,000
1,984 students.
with autism.
No, with autism, that's in general. In our autism, it's close to 300. There's 297 students we have with the eligibility of autism
That's within the district, correct?
throughout the district. Mhm.
Any questions?
I sent most of my questions over there. If there was something you felt that you didn't cover in the presentation, maybe you'd just like to read the question.
Sure. I think one of them was on how and when do the general education, special education teachers collaborate. Both of our general education, special education teachers participate in their grade level collaboration.
And they do that weekly, monthly?
They're on a rotational schedule, so by school site and also by the different grade levels. But yes, it's a regular basis that's done for them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have questions on, I just numbered mine, page 5, not the first slide, but after the first slide, which says continuum of services.
The pyramid. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I'm looking at where it says co-taught classrooms, gen ed and special education. Could you tell us more about like how many classrooms or how many teachers are doing co-teaching?
Right, sure. In all of our elementary sites, they are, the RSP, the resource specialist teacher, is co-teaching with the general education for those students. In our middle school, both the resource specialist teachers as well as the special day class teachers are co-teaching, as well as the high school. You see that model as well for both the RSP and special day class. And the subject areas that they focus on with co-teaching, of course, is language arts and math. One of our middle schools has started rolling out science that they're co-teaching this year. So we're very anxious to see and eager to see how the outcomes will happen with that.
Okay, so then it's all RSP teachers co-teach?
They may do a blended service where some co-taught classes and then some pull out, depending on the student needs.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said SDC would also co-teach in gen ed and ELA and math,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the way I'm understanding is that if I were to be employed here as a either RSP teacher or SDC teacher, I'm going to basically do a co-teaching class in ELA and math.
Right, and you may do some pull-out. It all depends on the student services. Keep in mind that the pyramid of continuum of services is fluid. So you may see a student throughout their educational career move throughout the different placements depending on their needs. So if they make progress and they're placed in a special day class, that they make progress, we want them to move to the least restrictive environment. We move them over to a resource program and monitor their progress then. So it's very fluid. You may see some students that are in a co-taught class for some subject areas, and they may be in a special day class or with a special education teacher in one classroom receiving services in another subject area.
So in other words, to make it clear, not all students are pushed into ELA and math.
And for co-taught, no, depends on their student needs.
Okay, but we don't know exactly how many teachers we have in RSP or ST.
Well, we have them in terms of in their job title, and I can get you that right now.
Okay, because I'm looking throughout the presentation and I noticed that it says the co-taught classes are at, when was that, Hollydale, or I could be mistaken. Actually, no, I take that back. It said Paramount High School and Zamboni Middle School. So that was page 14 for me, where it says, what do students say about co-teaching?
No, those are just quotes from the students.
Okay, correct. But I was just thinking, oh, it's only happening in these two
No,
classes.
no, those are just quotes that we got from the,
Okay.
we just happened to highlight those.
And then I noticed that in the pyramid, then you have SDC without mainstreaming. And this could be, when I look at SDC, it could either be mild, moderate, or moderate to severe. So is there a specific category or?
No, it depends really on the student's needs and what they are able to do. We want them to be successful if they do mainstreaming, so it may be that they're leading up to that.
Well, it worries me because the way it's written, it's like we're not mainstreaming the students. And I know that even if they're going to lunch, then that could be considered mainstreaming. So it.
Right, we were talking more in the pyramid about instruction, academic instruction. But you're right, in the IEP, it lists how much time they spend in general education, how much percentage of the time they spend in special education.
So in other words, they don't perhaps mainstream to an elective?
Right, if they're in secondary, right, it may be, or it may be that they have a different type of mainstreaming. Maybe it's that they're doing more of the social aspect. It all depends on the grade level and then the student needs.
Could you explain what mainstreaming is?
Sure, thank you. Mainstreaming is when the actual special education student that would be in a special day class goes into a general education setting. And just so before I forget, we have employed right now, and this number may change throughout the year, we have 39 teachers that have the job title resource specialist, and we have 64 teachers that are under special day class classification.
How many was the second one? I'm sorry.
64. And that, again, is a fluid number because we may hire as we need more.
And then further going down the pyramid, this is something that I've stated in various board meetings. My concern for our students that are going into non-public schools, which we could see by the pyramid, it's more restrictive. And the way I personally see it is that it's basically segregation. So as a board member, I would want to see data. What are we doing to intervene to help our students? So that's really alarming for me to see that we're actually placing them there. And I understand that there's some students that we might have done interventions and it didn't work, but I know the number of students receiving these services. I'm concerned, and with the number that is coming back.
Do we know how many? Do we know how
Our
many?
program specialist and our program administrators work very closely with the non-public school personnel to monitor, to make sure they're getting the services they need. If we feel at the IEP meetings or even the monthly check-ins or weekly check-ins that they sometimes do, we feel that they're being at least successful at all, then we start doing a transition plan to bring them back.
I believe in the last report, the Wednesday report, not this one, but the previous one, Dr. Perez gave us that information. I believe, if I'm correct, I don't have it in front of me, I believe that there was like 48 students and only 3 came back. What is the percentage? I mean, because I noticed that it was declining and it's declining for them coming back. Is there a reason why, or what, as Board Member De Leon says, our strategy is to bring them back? We want them back to Paramount.
Some of our students in non-public schools continue to struggle. emotionally, behaviorally. We have some students in non-public schools too that's not for behavior reasons. It may be for their developmental needs that is the placement that's best for them. There may be a program that the parents and the team thought it was wonderful for them to be in, and which may be a deaf or hard of hearing. Those are sometimes non-public school placements as well. So it's not just the behavioral. We have some students that have, depending on their other developmental or academic needs.
So you mentioned behavior. So do we, as a district, have non-public agencies coming to support us as far as perhaps behavior interventionist? I know we have some as far as the district employed, and what is their role?
Right, so we have consultants that we also contract out for trainings. We have some students that we have agency contract personnel that's working with them and training our district employees on the behavior strategies that they're utilizing.
And who gets trained? You said employees. Could you be more specific?
Classroom teachers as well as the instructional assistants.
Okay. Is there a particular intervention strategy or behavior strategy that they're employing?
We use quite a bit of the applied behavior analysis.
Okay.
The staff at Hollydale, that is the Autism Focus program, all of that staff has also been trained in a lot of the ABA strategies, which stands for applied behavior analysis. And we have had consultants that come in and do more in-depth training and mentoring with some of our staff as well.
Do we have like a functional behavior analysis? Well, as far as to determine why the student perhaps does what they do, is it attention seeking or what have you? And are the teachers then trained, and how successful?
Right.
You know.
So we have a couple of different, I guess, parts of an IEP that the team could recommend a student for a functional behavior analysis, a behavior intervention plan, and those become part of the IEP. So there's a plan that our specialists, our school psychologists, as well as behavior intervention specialists or counselors, our social workers are all involved in those goals, and then, of course, helping the teacher and the aides to apply, to implement those plans. And that does build in some constant review and monitoring.
Okay, so is that something that, let's say, a parent requests an FBA, which is a functional behavior analysis, and then they develop, goals and whatnot. Are these goals, when are they reviewed?
At least annually.
Okay, so it would be reviewed in their
But
IEP.
I mean, keep in mind too that there's the benchmark assessments or the benchmarks that also the IEP has, where the teachers and the support staff are looking at their progress. So you don't have to wait a year for the IEP meeting. You could always hold another meeting, revise those goals and objectives.
So in other words, we would have, there are, you would say, things that we could implement before we even get to then say, oh my gosh, this student is, needs more of a behavior intervention, and then we send them to non-public.
Oh, definitely. We do not like to do referrals to non-public schools because we feel that is a very restrictive environment. Our aim always is to do the least restrictive environment for our students.
Just for my knowledge, if a parent sees that their child has progressed, can the parent always ask for another IEP at any time?
Oh, of course. That's always their right. We always want to revise those goals and objectives. They'll hold in an addendum, is what it's called. So the teachers will do that with the parents.
Parents are always involved when there's an addendum?
I'm sorry?
Do the parents are always involved when there's an addendum?
We have to have parent consent. We cannot assess, evaluate a student. We cannot change the program placement or anything without parent consent.
I had a question about moderate and moderate severe students who are that are mainstreamed. How is it decided how if a student is able to go into mainstreaming? Because I hear back from folks sometimes that there are students that are just not ready to be in that mainstream class. So do we assess them somehow?
Yes, that's where the IEP goals come into place, and that's where the teachers really rely on their feedback from the staff that's in the classroom with them, the observation, the work completion they have in the classroom, the understanding, their comprehension skills, their social skills, all of that come into mind. Because when we design a plan for that student to be mainstream, we want it to be a positive, successful experience for them. And we also, that requires parent consent as well. Sometimes we have parents that say, I don't think they're ready. I'm afraid those kids are much bigger than my son or daughter. So it's a matter of us all working together to make sure that we're all ready for that mainstreaming opportunity.
So if a teacher or a parent feels that maybe a student isn't quite ready, then you would hold another IEP, or you would
Right,
hold
and we
another
change the goals.
conference.
Maybe we reduce the time they spend in mainstreaming. Maybe it's a subject area that they're mainstreamed in. We change it so it's maybe not as academically challenging for them, or maybe it doesn't require them to use a lot of oral language during that subject area. So we always, especially in the primary grades, we're always looking at them.
So do we have any like best buddy programs? I know those are more the teacher takes her time. I know I've done that in the past to really encourage our students, our gen ed students to really get involved with our students with special needs, because in society, they should be part of society,
Right.
and we don't want to outcast them. And we know that students with special needs, they need role models. So does a district or
Right. Quite a bit of our school districts are very innovative in those kind of practices they do. So that really we encourage those innovative practices to coming from the principal, working with their staff on how to do that. They have partnerships between the special education, general education teachers to make that possible. We have at Los Cerritos, they have a couple of different buddies programs for the moderate to severe. So it depends on the school site, depends on the ages of the students, the grade levels and everything.
so that
That is happening quite a bit in our schools.
So parents could perhaps request for that kind of activity?
Well, they would talk to the teacher and
Okay.
find out what opportunities are there and then take it from there.
Are there any sports?
Oh, yes, definitely.
that they could-
Definitely.
Okay.
We have some of our, at the senior campus, we've had some of our moderate to severe students participate as either the help or the assistant, the coach's assistant, if they're not able to get out there and really participate in some of the drills the teams have.
Do we have that also in the middle schools?
Yes.
And then changing the subject a little bit, it's still pertaining to special education. I'm seeing here PUSD's program aligned with Continuum of Services. And you have right here assistive technology. So, and I understand that some students might need an iPad per se, but I also know that there might be particular students that need more of a person that provides these services. Do we have a person?
Yes, we have.
designee?
Right. That used to be a service that was through our LACO SELPA, but now we've taken those programs back. And here in the district, we do have one of our speech and language pathologists is that contact person for that alternative and augmentative communication devices. So they're the ones that monitor the use of the devices. They're the ones that also help the teachers, train the teachers on how to use those devices in the classrooms. And those devices are also sent home with the students, so they also provide some training for the parents on how to use them at home.
Okay. I also understand that there are some parents that they're very hopeful. If there's one thing about parents is that they don't lose hope. And that hope can't stop with us. We have to be the role model. We have to push. We have to think outside the box, definitely. And I know that there are people questioning and saying, well, why don't perhaps a child, why don't they give them an iPad, or why don't they teach them sign language? And I know that this could be controversial because some parents prefer that their child speak. And so is that left to the parent to decide, or is it a collective decision? How do
Well, again, the parent is the one that gives consent to that individualized education plan. So the parent has a major part in that. Those decisions, you're right, they're very personal decisions in the type of method of communication that they prefer for their child. So we have the specialists that give, their findings on the assessment that they do. We also look at that, and then we present that to the parent. And what we present our recommendations, but it's up to the parent to give consent to those services.
So a parent has a choice.
They
Okay.
definitely do.
Thank you.
And I know in the past, like speech and language services, I could see through when we get our board agenda that we have had litigation or due process and parents or the students receiving compensation. Are we still in that same pattern, or are we?
Well, I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but the due process is a due process, meaning that's always there for the parents to file, to seek if they are not in agreement with what the district offer of free and appropriate public education is. So that's always a parent's right. Keep in mind that in the state of California, the filings for due process are very high. So what you're seeing here in Paramount is pretty much what you see throughout the district. It's on a regular basis.
Piggyback on Board Member De Leon, PUSD programs aligned with Continuum Services. For the special day class, I would like to request data from the last 5 years on the number of special day class students who received a diploma, and how many of those student day class students dropped out of school in the last 5 years.
Okay.
And then, and I understand Gen Ed, they are on the diploma track. Some students with mild to moderate disabilities could also be on the diploma track. But my concern would be more perhaps in the moderate to severe, that they receive a certificate of completion. But what does this mean? What does at the end, we know like for to receive a high school diploma, we know that they have to meet certain criteria. And so my concern would be, what is this certificate? What does this show as an accomplishment? So if I were to have a child, I would know, this certificate, this is what this means. And I know, and I understand that there's various levels of cognitive ability. And so what would that encompass?
Well, those conversations with parents are started off pretty much already once in their certificate program, especially at the middle school, high school, they start having those conversations. What would a certificate of completion mean for the student? Basically, the state of California recognizes that the student was able to complete the participation in an alternative curriculum kind of program. But that does not hold back students, again, that they are able to get part-time jobs once they finish with this, or even while they're in the adult transition program.
So it doesn't
That's
really,
recognized.
so it doesn't really demonstrate like, okay, what level they got to, or perhaps, okay, they're satisfactory in this area or whatnot. It's just-
No, and they did that because of so many different, the wide range of developmental needs that those students have.
I don't know if any other board member, because
Yes.
you know me, I always have all these
No,
questions.
you can continue. I'm
Okay,
trying to find mine.
The next page, it says Paramount Adult Transition Program. And what helped me to really understand the Paramount Adult Transition Program was for me to go visit the program. It seemed a really nice program. There are some concerns that I do have, though. For instance, there is a mock apartment. I feel that perhaps we could start at a younger age to not that necessarily that they're going to cook, but perhaps making their bed, things that could be then implemented at home. So I'm wondering if there's like a connection. So, and then further on, I'm thinking like, I know there was a student that was there at the school site when I went to visit, and the student was working at Denny's. The student stated, I can clean by mopping, picking up dishes and whatnot. It concerns me, and I don't know the whole story, but most students could do that already at home. So then what are we doing to push the boundaries more? Because if the student is already cleaning her or his house and knows how to mop, we could perhaps break out of that cycle of just having perhaps mediocre jobs. And I'm not just saying it for myself, but I'm hearing it from my community, that they don't want their child to just go into the cleaning. They already know how to clean at home. So, and I'm just trying to think out the box, like perhaps, you know, we could develop something on the iPad where this child or this young adult could then take orders. Just push
Right,
the
and
boundaries.
it depends also on the student needs that are there and their interest. So our job developer at the Adult Transition Program works with that student as well as with the parents and the teacher to try to find a job placement that they have an interest, a genuine interest in. So you heard from the student that was talking about Denny's. That may be what she wanted to try at the restaurant industry. We have other students that work at grocery outlet and they're actually stocking. We have other students that may work at the print shop in the district helping. So it depends on their skills level and their interest as well. So it's not just a custodial kind of career track that we offer for the students. It really is very individualized. That's why it's special education.
I also mentioned when I was there an idea. I would, of course, we would have to check if everyone was okay. But I noticed that the person that helps the district network to get jobs for these students, I mentioned that perhaps it would be like some kind of incentive that we had some kind of logo sticker that they would put in front of their business. Of course, I wouldn't know what it would exactly would say. And I mean, that's something that it's just an idea. Of course, I would love for the community to basically them ultimately decide on what they would want it to say, because sometimes words are not always friendly to parents or families. And so my idea would be then those parents that have children, or if you yourself, most of us at least know someone with special needs, that at least I would go to that business more often than not. I know in Northgate, there's a student there, and I mentioned before, I don't like shopping, but when I have to go, I make sure that I go to that line because I want to make sure that I support that student. And hopefully we would build a better district and community, and just, you know, just push the boundaries. That's what I would want for the students.
That's a good idea.
I do have a question on the front page, number 1, where it says general education setting and initial program outcomes. What do you mean by initial program outcomes?
That's because we just started the co-teaching and the special day classes last year. So
Last year. Okay, last year.
At that level,
At which level? I'm sorry.
the preschool. Are you talking about the preschool
I'm sorry?
level?
It doesn't say, what is it? It just says review actions and increase opportunities for students with special needs into general education settings and initial program
Oh,
outcomes.
okay.
So,
Just
okay.
in general.
In general, okay. So it started last year in 2018. Okay. So we don't have any statistics yet. Okay. And For which group of students? Is for all group of students? Special ed, moderate, severe?
I'm sorry, for which one?
For the initial program outcome? Is that for all?
That was at the middle school, and that's in our co-teaching classes, and that was for students in our resource specialist program and our special day class for mild moderate.
Okay.
Mhm.
So it's not for moderate, severe students, is that correct?
No, because remember, they have a different curriculum. They have Attainment as their curriculum.
Okay.
It's more life skills based.
Okay. Hold on 1 minute.
And how is attainment implemented?
It's an actual curriculum with curriculum guides and everything. So it's sequential, and it is aligned with the Common Core standards in terms of the general concepts.
So that means like if we have a student that's in first grade, by the time they go to second grade, they would just
Right.
continue on.
It's just like our core curriculum, but it's
Okay.
a different type of curriculum. And then they are state-approved curriculums.
And just from my understanding, on page 2 where it says children and youth ages 3 through 21, I'm under the impression, which I may be wrong, and pardon me if I am, I thought they were, we had them 4 years after, from 18 to 22.
Well, once they reach that 22nd birthday,
So to me, I mean,
all
my
of
understanding should be,
all of the 21st birthday.
okay, when they hit 22.
Yeah. And this language was taken from the federal law.
Okay.
Is there any way for us, or at least I'm interested in looking at attainment? Because I'm not used to that. I'm
Sure.
used to unique. I know
Yes, that's another one that
I'm
they
used to
use, right.
unique. So I
Right.
would want to see how this
Sure.
follows.
We'll try to get you some samples of that.
I would like that too, because I have here, I have a question on attainment too. Is it supplemental materials? I mean, what is really attainment?
It's a curriculum, meaning it's the whole sequential where they're doing the stories, they're doing some lessons on this life skills. They have math incorporated, but it's the real life experience math.
If we get those samples, that'd be really nice. Let me see here.
So would it have like an assessment? Let's say they take an assessment. Let's say they're in 5th grade and they're moving on to 6th grade, but sometimes we know that our students with special needs regress. And so is the teacher able to assess and then determine, okay, they regress, so now they're at this level, or they've made progress and now they're at this level?
For special education, the teachers do use some of that, but really they also go by the IEP goals and objectives, because that's where the individualization is happening.
Okay. Hold on. I noticed that the Autism Focus, I don't even have page number, but on PUSD
Holiday?
programs and alignment and continuous, it says holiday K through 8. What happens after they graduate 8th grade?
They go on to the high school programs. So then that IEP team works on the placement that they would have for the high school.
So does that IEP team work with the IEP team from the high school? And then
Definitely.
they just,
Anytime there's a transition, even from one grade level to the other, but definitely from elementary to middle school, they have matriculation meetings where those teachers get together and they talk about the students. That's where they review the IEP goals and other things that have helped the teacher with those students be successful in the classroom.
and are the parents included in that?
That is more for the instructional, but the parents have a transitional IEP. The transition from one grade level to the other happens during the IEP. Let's say a student's going from the elementary to middle school, they would start addressing that in that IEP meeting for that student.
Could the parents be involved in the transition from 8th through the 9th grade with the teachers that you're talking? That way,
I mean, that in the IEP team, you would have that. You would have the teacher that's receiving the student and the IEP team as well.
You mentioned that there was 297 students that meet eligibility for autism.
As their primary disability.
So I know you have the Autism Focus at Hollydale, correct? So how many classes do we have and how many students can enroll in that program?
Well, that program, again, it's a program that is designed for students that have the eligibility of autism, but they also have to mild to moderate delays. So you're looking at some of our students with autism may also have other developmental delays that may not be the program for them, because that's a general education curriculum. So we take all of those things into consideration. We're doing program placement. But at Hollydale, we have classes from kindergarten all the way up through 8th grade.
So are you saying it's more for like a higher functioning student with autism?
It may be that profile, because that is a general education curriculum with the social skills training that goes with it.
So how many class, I mean, and you mentioned it's basically once they start, they continue to 8th grade. So it's that many classes that they have. So it's pretty much just one class.
No, they have several classes. So you may have a special day class that's K1, and then they have another second, third.
I know. I understand the continuum.
Right.
So basically kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade. So that's already 9 classes, because 1st grade through 8th is 8.
Well, we combine some of our classrooms because we may not have enough students to make
so
a
it could
full
be a combo class. So it could be less than that. So then how many students average per class?
I'd have to look at that, because right now we're still at the beginning of the year, so our numbers are kind of fluid. So we have we start to stabilize our enrollment around this week. So
I'm asking because I don't know, and I want to understand. Basically, you're saying, or we're saying that it depends on their ability to basically do this gen ed curriculum, so they have to be higher functioning.
It could be with modifications, of course.
Yes.
Because it's special day class.
Yes, accommodations, modifications. But then I'm concerned if we have, like, per se, a cap of how many students could go there, and then once they finish 8th grade, like, what do we have for the students that continue on, and then what do we have for the ones that didn't meet the criteria, or maybe they could have met the criteria, but we just don't have room for them?
We don't limit just because we don't have staff. We hire more. If we need to open more classrooms, we do. But for right now, we have 5 teachers at the Hollydale Autism Program. And the last several years, that's been, we are able to maintain our numbers with those 5. But if we do get a larger percent of students that need that setting, then we would add another teacher to them.
So is there a reason why we stop at 8th grade and not continue?
I think when they developed that program, it was by the time they were in 8th grade, a lot of those students had learned strategies on how to seek out appropriate kind of attention, or in order to self-regulate. They've learned ways to compensate. And keep in mind also that in our high school, our staff are still trained to work with students that may have the eligibility of autism. It just doesn't mean that we don't stop providing that support. It's just now done more in the context of a high school setting.
So then for the students that don't qualify, or not per se don't meet the eligibility because of their cognitive ability to be in the pretty much gen ed curriculum, do we still have like some kind of behavior program for them?
Definitely. Our teachers are still trained in all of those ABA type of strategies. And if they need more support, there's always our program specialist, as well as our behavior intervention specialist, that will help them with them.
You also mentioned, is it Dr. Garcia? I know it's Garcia, but I'm not sure if it's Dr. Garcia. Yes. Okay. I wasn't sure. I don't want
That's
to
okay.
say something
No
that
problem.
I'm like, oh, or I'll start calling everyone doctors. It's okay. You mentioned that at one point, students will work with the regional centers, or at least the regional center. Are the parents aware of these services, or does a district make them aware, or is it something?
Well, we get referrals from the regional center where the parents already been part of that. The family's been a client of the regional center starting when they come in at 3 years of age. So we have transition IEPs and everything before they turn 3 years. So we already have services in place for them when on their 3rd birthday. So the parents, we cannot, a minor cannot be a client of the regional center without the parent being involved.
So then, like, at what point, well, I've worked with regional centers, at least the Harbor Regional Center, and they do come at certain transitional phases in the students' lives. So as they're transitioning, you could say maybe the high school to then the adult
The adult transition program.
Yes. Before they transition, is the regional center invited or?
Most of those students are already clients of the regional center. So we just highly encourage them to continue that service once they leave our district.
Now, one thing that wasn't mentioned, and as a parent, having a student with special needs, I never received any type of workshop. And I never really questioned it because I worked already with students with special needs. I know LA Unified, Whittier City, they always have like parents engage in different workshops to know their rights. But I never seen that, and to this day, I've never seen that. Who do we get a hold of? Is it LACO to come and provide those services?
Those programs were often provided, those type of workshops were often provided by LACO SELPA. But now remember, we've taken LACO and now we're a part of Mid-City SELPA. So it's just newly developed. So we are trying to find ways on how to plan those so that we can serve a wider area of parents with those type of workshops. But that is something in the making. But our parents, remember, are part of the school site where they attend. So they're always invited to the workshops that go on at that school site. They're always invited to, if they're having difficulty with their child at home with certain, developmental adolescent kind of issues that may come up, they could always tap into the school counselor there, talking to them. That is all part of their community as well.
And so like the behavior specialist, because I know my son was a handful. I think Mr. Jackson, he was a handful. But it was disappointing to see that, that was a while back, but they would just tell me like, well, what do you want in the behavior plan? And well, even though at one point I wanted to become a behavior specialist, I felt like that wasn't my thing to do. I did state, okay, well, this is what I want. And so thank goodness Mr. Jackson said, okay, this is what we're going to have. I'm open to provide help. And that's what helped him. Once he went to the middle school, it was like a whole different child. And then once we ended up, because he wasn't allowed to have an elective, and I know my child, and that's the thing that frustrates me. And I understand my community when they say, I know what I need for my child, because they've been living with that child forever. So nobody's ever going to know that child but the parent more. And I had requested, and I said, I need my child to have an elective. He's in high school. He needs something so he can look forward. And it was denied. And it was very upsetting. So I had to send him to Riverside, where he did have an elective. And oddly, and at the same time, it was interesting, he was working with horses. And that changed his whole perspective, and he was able to graduate. When at one point I felt, this kid is not going to graduate. So, that's something that other school districts, such as Long Beach, they have all means all. And that's something that I would want to really look into, and hopefully one day we adopt that resolution, and that when we say all means all, that everyone can transition or mainstream into something, even if it's art for 5 minutes, and go in, because we need to build those connections with the gen ed population and our special needs, because they're the ones who will advocate for our students, because our students, most of them can't advocate for themselves.
And that's why we're very hopeful for our co-teaching opportunities, as well as our inclusion preschool program that we started.
I do have a question on the curriculum and instruction. On the last sentence where it says students learn math and literacy skills in the context of real life application, can you give me an example of that?
Sure, like their math is done more maybe on real life examples of going to the grocery store, adding up their bills. Maybe it's the checkbook balancing that they may do their math in. So it's not word problems that, are very hard for some of these students maybe to comprehend. It's more related to everyday kind of living.
And that includes the moderate to severe students.
That is for the moderate severe. Mhm.
And then one other question. For the support for schools, it says professional development for teachers, principals, and instructional aides. What are the type of topics, and what is the focus?
Sure. So we did co-teaching this year, of course, with some of our middle school staff. Then we've done them in the past with high school and elementary staff. Our behavior aides get trained in the behavior strategies more in depth. They get trained also on health needs that the students may have that they're working with in the classrooms. It may be our teachers have in the past also, well, actually the summer and beginning of the school year, they were part of the Teacher Institute on how to make accommodations and modifications in the classroom for students with special needs. So there's different array, topics depending on the need that the teachers tell their specialist or tell their principals of what they need. So that's what we provide for them.
I understand. Now, does this include moderate to severe also?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Mhm.
I don't hear that very
Those
much.
teachers are always included in our professional development and our teacher staff meetings at the sites.
Now, the curriculum specialists, do they get involved in helping to modify if there's needs to be modification of work assignments? Like, let's
We
say
have
when they're coaching?
we have program specialists that are working more with the curriculum, that are assigned more working with curriculum, and they work with the educational service curriculum specialist as well as a partnership on how to make some of those modifications to the curriculum guides and modifications to the assessment methods as well.
Okay, I'm asking because I know not too long ago, that was before I was on board, there was teacher concern. So I haven't forgotten. And it was the fact that they were impacted with their students mainstreaming. One, the students struggling, they couldn't do the work. And I know it's all cities, district-wide, it's a push to mainstream. What concerns me, though, is the fact that most students are still failing. And then I look at this data right here where it says early outcomes, language arts, and then you have also a graph for math. And it says that in 2017, 2018, the AC grades were 74.70%, and then there was an increase. And so my concern is if there is an increase, which is great, then shouldn't they just be in gen ed if they're getting those grades?
It depends on the students. It could be that they're getting those grades with some modifications still.
Okay, so then these grades are modified.
Some of them depending on the student.
Okay. So we don't, so this data, does it reflect modified or not modified?
It reflects overall their report card grade.
Okay, so we don't know if it's modified. So also, as they're improving language arts, like what are we taking data on? Just, I know the grades have improved, but has reading increased, and how much so? Or
And that's why we want to take a look more at that data. This is just the initial.
Is there a rubric for the grades?
Yes, that would be more of a general education question, but there is, the teachers have a certain criteria that they use.
And what happens if a student gets a D? I mean, I know that they're not placed in this, but do they continue on? Do they keep? So whether they pass or not, they just continue on?
And F is the class, the F grade for the high school would be where they're not getting units for that course.
would you happen to know, Dr. Garcia, when we would get like more of a better analysis of the data as to say, okay, they have A's and C's or A through C's grade-wise, but what are they, like pinpoints of what is it that they are increasing in ELA or in math?
Based on the state achievement test or based on report cards? I'm not understanding the measure.
It could be for, let's say, ELA. Okay, ELA is English Language Arts. Is it their writing skills? Is it because the district test that they take? You know, is it sometimes, you know, as well, at least I know that there are teachers that grade by the heart. It's like, oh, there's a good student, let's give them a better grade. And how can we measure that? Is there a rubric that every teacher has, and they have to stipulate, okay, well, you know, these are this is what they have, okay, this is what their grade? Or is it more of just more?
Right, and this is, of course, initial outcomes. So the data that we collect is not just going to be on maybe report cards. We're going to collect maybe data on looking at what the teachers' comments are, what the students also talk about in terms of what they're learning. So this is just initial.
Right. So when we do get the report, the data, because I'm a data person, could we have the different categories or the different what we are really looking into? That's what my bottom thing is. What
And
are
that
we
is
really,
because you want to see as a result of the co-teaching model?
well, both. I mean, I want to see both co-teaching and non-co-teaching to see which one's better. What are we doing one versus the other? I mean, because the data is the outcome. The data is going to tell us if we're doing well or not. And that's what I want to see.
Right. Another thing also that I want to bring up is when you look at the research on inclusion of students with special needs, the most significant gains that happen in those studies across time, across the nation, are in oral language skills for students and social skills. Okay? Academic achievement gains are smaller gains than what you would see with a student with oral language and the social skills, especially in the primary, preschool to the elementary grades. Okay, so some of those benefits are not going to translate directly to an achievement score, but their self-esteem may go sky high, their social skills may go sky high. So some of those are the gains that you're going to see from inclusion that are a little different.
But
I could add to that because I think that comment is very important, that there are many reasons that we advocate for inclusion, many benefits. And so sometimes we capture some of those other benefits, those achievement-related benefits through surveys. So we'll survey students, we'll survey parents to ask, you know, what is your child's experience now compared to what it may have been in the past? And that kind of data, that more qualitative data, is just as important, because how kids feel about school and how parents see their students feeling about school is also very valuable, and we have to take that into consideration.
correct, and that's what I'm asking for. Any data that you have, we would like to see what's working and what's not working. I understand. I would like to see all data actually, because that gives us an example of where something is needed versus what's working and what's not. And if what's working, why can't we do it? Let's just say something's working in middle school. Why can't we bring it to the high school? Or why can't we start it in the elementary school? So that way we know we're achieving where we want to achieve. Yes, we all learn differently, and it's true. We all have different results. That I do agree.
And I agree with the data that shows, as you mentioned, Dr. Stark, that these students do achieve socially and their language skills increase. And this is why I am so happy that we are going to have its preschool program, right?
The inclusion one.
Yes, because those students that have the disabilities really need to have their gen ed peers as their little teachers. So this tells me that Mod Severe also needs to be mainstream. And I bring it up, and it's something that, you know, people might go, oh my gosh, it's so shameful. But I bring it up because these are legitimate concerns of people in my community. And they said, well, you know, my child is supposed to have art, or he's supposed to have this, but, you know, and it stipulates on the IEP, but he's not being mainstream because there wasn't someone to go with him. There wasn't, you know, well, I don't know. And to me, that saddens me. But at the same time, it's like we have to face the fact that this is happening in order for us to move forward and do better and to get a consensus of our teachers, because we need for them to speak up and say, well, I can't do X, Y, and Z. This is the support that I need, because then we're not really following the IEP, and that could put us in litigation. And so I would like, and I know the parents would like, for these students to really mainstream, whether it be in an elective or what have you, with the proper support, and have an understanding. I know there's still gen ed teachers that are not so into the mainstreaming. They state, oh, the child can't do what, what I'm asking. But I would think that our curriculum specialist or program specialist can make sure that we would have something that the students can do, and they get those interactions with the gen ed students. To me, that's important, and it's by law we should be mainstreaming. So that's what I have for that.
I have other, besides the PowerPoint, because it is special ed, about transportation. We got some data that was given to us, and I just have a couple questions, if I may. One is, are the aides assigned to a taxi?
Depending on the student's needs, and that's an IEP decision.
Okay. Are the aides trained to deal with behavioral issues?
That's the training that I was saying, that our instructional assistants are getting more on behavior strategies, the principles of behavior we're starting off with. Then we're doing a follow-up training. They have gotten training from their teachers, from supervising teachers, as well as some of our program specialists in the past, but this time we're being much more strategic about how we're training them.
Okay. And if a student has a medical issue or behavior issue while in the taxi, what is the protocol for the child?
So if a student has a medical condition, already our school nurses have developed a health plan and have trained both the aides that are working and the teachers that are working with that student. So they would follow the health plan.
Can the board have a copy of the protocols for that?
Do you want a copy of the health plan or the written procedures?
The written procedures.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Let me see here. I've had a couple complaints this week. Parents have called me regarding taxi services versus the bus services. I believe in 2012, the Board of Education changed from buses to taxis. Some parents are saying the taxis are too small, that their childs are now, they're growing, they're in middle school now. And are there minivans that we can use instead of those small taxis?
That would be a question I think Mr. Frutos or Transportation Department could answer.
It is something that we would need to ask our providers to see what type of vehicles they can give us, and we're happy to look into it.
Okay, if we can look in that, because the middle school, I mean, they brought up, and you have a child in there. What I was told is that there is 2 children in this small little vehicle with 2 aides, and the child is put in the back seat between 2, and the child's too small. I mean, they're crunched, and so to me, that's a concern. The other concern I have is that another parent called me, and this, I understand the IEP. I've seen an IEP that she had initially, since a young age. The child now is in 2nd grade, so since preschool or kindergarten, they had door-to-door service, and all of a sudden, the transportation person told her that it's no longer door-to-door. So for my clarification, I just want to understand, if the transportation person tells the parent that now the child has to go to a certain point to take that child to the school and pick him up, when that child had door-to-door service, what can the parents do? If the parent's not here, I want them to hear it online, because now we're online, so the parent could know that they have rights and what is.
Right, they can contact the special education office and ask to speak to the program administrator or the program specialist, and we will look more individually at that case.
Okay. Now, if the parent feels that that person didn't do much? What is a chain of command? That was my question.
Once it goes to the program specialist or program administrator, then will come to me as a director.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
Going back to I know you said ABA training, which is Applied Behavior Analysis. Do staff, meaning teachers and instructional assistants, do they get the CPI training?
Yes, they do, and we're setting up dates for this year with that. We have 2 certified trainers within our district that provide that.
I can't remember what it stands for. I always like to try it so people that are listening or viewing could follow, and I'm like, I know it's CPI. I don't have my computer right here. One thing, as far as I know that we have staff that are instructional assistants and teachers, and then we have security. Do they get the CPI training?
That would be I don't know if Mr. Frutos could answer that question.
What is CPI training? What is CPI training?
That's different strategies and techniques that you use in order to help physically control a child that may be having a temper tantrum or an acting out aggressive physical. There's certain techniques where you use in order to hold them so that they don't harm themselves or harm others. And so the staff is specifically trained in those strategies.
Mm-hmm. Which mainly shows that the student has rights, and that if anything, what you learn is not to restrain. So you use strategies basically to de-escalate the student or whatnot. But I just wanted to see or know the difference between our personnel that is working as safety, and do they intervene if there's a behavior problem, or do we have our staff who have the CPI training?
It would be mostly this classroom staff that would help, and the administrators are trained in them, and our counselors and our support staff.
And for the CPI, just from my understanding, the CPI training, does the individual get a certificate showing that they have that training?
I believe they do. Our certified trainers have certain procedures that they have to follow that's based on that training.
And is it like the certificate that when you do CPR, you carry it with you at all times? That way you can do it?
It's more just kept on file so that it's more for them to know what techniques to use. It's the CPR, it's more of a legality issue that you have to have the card with you at all times.
Okay.
Usually they do give you a card.
Yeah. Okay.
Now going back, sorry, we're going like back and forth or different topics. I'm looking at co-teaching. How long has this been occurring, the co-teaching?
It started at the secondary level, and I believe it's about 10 years now. It started with the resource specialist program, teachers going and doing co-teaching back then.
Because I know on one PowerPoint where it says support for schools, I called it page 16. It says that professional development on co-teaching is provided by Dr. Wendy Morowski of To Teach LLC, an expert on this topic. Co-teaching teams receive 2 days of training followed by a classroom visit and feedback. So if they needed more support, would they just reach out?
That's where we would work then with the consultants from To Teach, and then maybe extend their contract and relook at that.
Okay.
But for now, if this is, we provide training. The teachers that have already been doing co-teaching have gone through some training. There's also a follow-up for that, but then there's also, we have new teaching teams every year.
Would you happen to know how many staff are certified for CPI?
We could find that out. That's, it's done every year, so we can give you the numbers of the trainings, how many participants have gone through it every year.
Mm-hmm. Now, going back to the taxis, depending on the student needs and according to their IEP, they might have someone that rides with them.
Right.
So I'm not sure of the term of what you would call them, an aid? Is that the correct term?
Additional support.
Okay, additional support. So the person that is doing the additional support, if there was to be an emergency, would that person call the district? Would it be the taxi driver? Who would intervene? Okay, so they don't use their own personal phones, or they don't get involved. In other words, it's the taxi driver that has this protocol to call.
Now, we have taxi service, we shouldn't say it that way, sorry. The taxi services have their own liability, correct? So let's just say there's an accident that happens. Is the school district still liable, or is it the taxi service liable? Now, I wasn't here in 2012, so is that one of the reasons why we changed from, besides saving money, but it's part of saving money, is that's why we changed from buses to taxis, because of the liability insurance? Okay. Time. So, thank you. On the Wednesday update, it states that we are going to have an analysis for the current year, 1920, in mid-April 2020 to look over this. At that time, I believe we can probably look at the different details and see if we can, should we continue with taxis, or should we go back to buses? Is that what we're analyzing at that time? Okay. When you say contract renewal, would we be able to see the difference between a renewal, well, it wouldn't be renewal, but a contract for buses versus the renewal of the taxi service? Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
I just have one comment. I would like to have, like in the future, and I know this is just a study session, this is just my ideas besides the logo, stickers, whatever you want to call it. I really think that, and this is not just my idea, but this is what the community has asked, is that we provide them with an independent parents committee that these parents pertain to special education, and that they would be able to convene. I'm not sure what location, that would depend on the parents, because we know that when we network with other parents, they can give us strategies. They could guide us as to how do you maybe increase a certain behavior that you want, or decrease a different behavior, or just, I think that that's, that would bring power to the parents and really help them to navigate, because it could be very hard to know what IDEA stands for, to know just the terminology, the laws, and to have like per se workshops that these parents could go to, and perhaps then they could have like a person that represents them, and they could come to the board and let us know, okay, this is what we're doing great, but this is what we need to improve on. I think that would be something that the community would benefit.
I also agree to that. That would be a terrific idea. That is a perfect idea, because the parents do want to feel empowered, and they're the ones who want to get together, talk about their issues among each other, and then let them come and bring it to the board, and let not just the board, the audience, the rest of the community know what's going on, because we have parents at home right now that can't come, and they probably feel the same way. But if they feel that they can get together with their peers, you know, they're all parents, they all have different issues, but it's almost the same, that they can get together and feel more comfortable talking among, and then have a spokesperson or have 2 or 3 spokespersons and coming to the board and let us know what's going on. That'd be a very good idea.
Yes, because part of the comments, they want to feel part of the family, and we can't, and we shouldn't put them aside. They need to be part of the family, just like we have the DLAC, ELAC committees. Well, why not have a committee of parents that they're independent and they get together, they determine what school site, and, you know, what they need perhaps. I just want to make sure we're all one family.
And I do appreciate all the parents who have come today to let, you know, to show us that, you know, your concerns, all the board here, all 5 of us, Lynn and Glenda Garcia including, we hear your concerns. We want to be there for you. We're here for the students, for parents and teachers. So the more we hear from you, the more we can make Paramount better, the district. But if we don't hear from the concerns, sometimes we don't know. So thank you very much. Any other questions on this?
No, thank you very much.
No, just one last comment.
Sure.
Sorry,
Sure.
I apologize, but I know that sometimes there's issues where parents have stated that teachers aren't really working. They've seen them on their cell phones, or they've seen employees on their cell phones. So how can we, well,
I have a question. Did the parent, did she say that she saw students on telephone, cell phones and computers, or was it teachers? Teachers and aides, that's what you said? Okay, I wasn't sure. That's what I wrote down, but I wasn't sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that is an issue, because it was brought to my attention also. They call me, and they specifically said, and I'm not going to put it on record, but there's one particular classroom that is very concerning, and I guess the parents did go to the teacher. So that's why I want to know what the chain of command is, so that they can, and ultimately it would be probably to speak to you.
And keep in mind that you could always tell parents to go to that principal. That site principal is
Yes.
right there and then.
Principals change.
Yes, the way I said, and mark me if I'm incorrect because I'm on speaker now, is I first said go to assistant principal. Well, first the teacher, assistant principal, and then yourself. Is that correct?
Right.
And that's
But we
what I
first
told
want to deal with that issue right there at the site
Correct,
level.
Yeah.
correct. That's what I'm saying, is the teacher, the assistant principal, and if it doesn't get done, then they can always go to you, correct? Or make an appointment to see you. Thank you. Any other questions, comments on this? Sure.
I don't really see that. For me, inclusion is my chance to be in maybe like something like farm, because I'm with the school, they have like a farming class. We talk about cleaning, we talk about taking out, but what about music? What about farming? What about teaching them to do something that has to do with the cleaning?
Yeah,
Yes.
good point. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. I know. Hold on. Sorry. Gerald, I know you came up and spoke, and I know you had your time to speak. If you'd like to write down your questions, we're more than happy to answer them and send them to you. And I know you want everybody to hear your questions, but if you just write them down, we'll get back to you with them, and we'll make sure that, it's been said. Okay. Okay.
Board members, we were able to make copies of the Special Education Task Force report by the School Boards Association, so feel free to take a copy with you. Thank you, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia.
Okay, Dr. Manuel San Miguel?
Good evening, President Gomez,
evening.
members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Perez. The purpose of our presentation this evening is to update our Board of Education on the Community Schools Initiative, which will include the background information, program description, staffing, progress to date, and then our next step. On January 15th of 2019, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors approved Motion 22B, which is to provide the following: $10 million to enhance mental health and student well-being throughout Los Angeles County, develop a plan with the Department of Mental Health and Los Angeles County Office of Education that provides mental health services, including but not limited to prevention, early intervention, education, and support. There were 10 districts, Los Angeles County districts, that were invited to participate in the initial phase of this program, and Paramount was selected as one of those 10 to participate in this initiative. Program description: using the local schools as hubs, the community schools offer a range of supports and services to achieve the following results. They want to get students attending school consistently, students actively involved in learning and participating in their communities, families increasing involvement in their child's education, students succeeding academically, and healthy students, both physically, emotionally, and socially. The crux of this program is to co-locate several county resources at district sites. So resources from a variety of agencies will be made available through this program. So these agencies, the crux of it is to bring these agencies to our community, to our schools, so that these agencies and our parents will be able to get together and our parents can take advantage of these supports. Programs such as child support services, children and family services, health services, mental health, parks and recreation, probation, public health, and public social services. The county provides staffing for this program, so it's not paid through the district. It is paid through Los Angeles County Office of Education. And basically, they will be housed or serviced by what's called a community school. It's actually the correct term. It was at one time community schools coordinator, but they changed that term to be a specialist. So it's staffed by a community school specialist, program specialist, and then the other, which was before considered to be a parent liaison, is now considered to be a educational community worker. So these positions will serve as liaisons with multiple Los Angeles County offices and agencies, and assist our school community in understanding the community framework, in navigating the process of developing community schools, of identifying resources for our families and students, and fostering partnerships with county agencies and community-based organizations. Paramount High School has been identified as a hub for these services. Paramount High School alone has 3,500 students, so it's one of the reasons why we looked at that as a hub for these services. A physical location for the hub resource room has been identified by school and district staff, and LACO has hired the community school program specialist and the educational partner with our input. So staff has been hired by LACO. What's next? We would like to prepare our memorandum of understanding. We just received that. We had looked for possibly submitting that to the Board of Education in September. However, the fact that we just received the MOU from LACO, looks like we might be pushing that back out to October. We would complete the renovation of the hub resource room at Paramount High School to accommodate the program and staff, to meet with community school staff to discuss our district protocols and expectations, to identify specific services that will be offered initially, to plan for hours of operation services and support available, and a referral process for students and families, and then to create a district-wide communication plan on how we're going to be informing our students, our staff, and our parents. So with that, is there any questions?
I do have a question. On the background, it
Yes.
says $10 million. Is the $10 million equally divided among the 10 districts?
I would say no. I would say it's really, it's not equally divided because the $10 million is really kind of centrally located through LACO, and it's really for how they're going to staff each one of the schools. I would say that it probably is pretty close because each school district is going to receive the same type of staffing support as our district is. But I can't say that they didn't necessarily allocate it to the district. It was just $10 million that is centrally located to make this program work at each one of the districts.
And it was mentioned that 10, with a select 10 LA County Unified School Districts participate in the initial phase of the initiative. What were the qualifications? How do we qualify versus?
You know, that's a good question. It was a number of different criteria that was used to identify the school districts that were involved or that are going to be involved. But as I looked through the districts, and I'd be happy to share those with you, Baldwin Park, Bassett, Bellflower, Compton, Duarte, Inglewood, Linwood, Montebello, Norwalk, Paramount, Pasadena, Pomona, and Santa Monica. So it's interesting because they're all different in their in demographics and some of the other things. But they looked at things like the free and reduced lunch count. They looked at things like the demographics of the community and so forth. So we have that information. I just can't speak to it exactly as to how we were identified as one of the districts. But they use a number of different types of.
Is that somewhere that I can read? Or
as a matter of fact, yes, I believe that we can get that. I can get that information.
That'll be interesting. Please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
Also, I'll do my questions first. Also on the program description where it says students attending school consistently, can you define the word consistently?
Well, I would say that because I work in the attendance realm, I would say that one of the criteria that we use to make sure that students is that they don't fall into the chronic absenteeism rate, that they don't have absences that equal over 10% of the school year. So in a case where there's 180 school days, 18 days would be considered a chronic absent student. So they, so in other words, I don't know if they defined it. They haven't even defined it in this criteria. That I've looked through the MOU and the other areas. But I would say that someone who falls well below the chronic absenteeism rate would be someone who would be improvement. However, with that said, they have developed measurement tools to assess how this program is meeting those needs. So there are tools that will be looking at data such as that in order to be able to, and they will be, and it's part of the MOU, it will be built into the program as far as making sure that we do have indicators to show that that we're meeting those goals.
Okay. And on your second bullet point, students actively involved in learning and participating in their community, how are they participating in their community? In which way? I mean.
Good question. Don't know if I can answer that question offhand. I'm trying to go back to exactly what, I'll go back to the slide, see if I can.
On the program description?
Okay.
1, 2, 3, the
So
fifth
students
page.
actively involved in learning and
That one right there.
participating.
I
Okay.
think based on the meetings that I have had with LACO on this, they are identifying that they are our students, basically, that they go to our schools, they live in our community. And my impression in meeting with them, and as a matter of fact, I think it's next Wednesday, we have a kickoff for this at LACO, where we can bring some of these questions, Dr. San Miguel. This is very new for LACO.
Mhm.
This is very new. When we first met with them about this, we were talking concept. Do you remember that?
Absolutely.
And the questions were, what if? What if? What if? And I said, whatever it is, whatever it becomes, I want it for our kids, because obviously this is a service that every district needs right now. That's the reason that we have social workers in all of our schools now. And we know that this is, and being able to have our parents have access, readily have access to these services is huge for our community. So I think a lot of these things honestly, I think LACO is still evolving and creating and answering. And I think this vision that Dr. Eduardo had, she's the county superintendent, in working with the Board of Supervisors, this vision that she has to bring these services to the community so that, parents don't have to go far to access them is something that is new. But one thing they have said, they will collect data. And as long as they collect data and it looks like they are meeting a need, they will continue to fund it. They have committed to funding it every year. So that's why they are going to put a lot of that $10 million also in collecting the data so that they could show the Board of Supervisors, look, this is working. Look at the number of children that we are serving, the number of families that we are reaching, and then they can get services every year.
That is correct.
Yeah, but this is so new for them.
Yes.
And
Still working through a lot of the.
Yes, they are still working through but we told them, whatever you need, we're there, because we want to have this service for our kids.
I agree. And,
And I'd be happy as we have the kickoff and get, more meetings and give the board also a report updates on, how many kids, that data that they're going to collect. We need to share it with the board so the board is aware of how many families are being served.
Absolutely.
So remember that, okay,
Yeah.
I will
Dr. San
remember
Miguel?
It is a great program. I'm not saying nothing about the program. It was just curiosity of what does it mean by participating in their community?
Sure.
They
Right.
could be different ways that they're doing. I
Right.
just would like to know.
Well, the good thing about it is that built into the MOU is a very clear statement about the outcome measure tools.
Perfect.
So it's very clear as far as using a battery of assessments and screening tools to determine the collaboration. So they've really built the assessment piece into this program, which I think is pretty admirable.
Thank you. Any other questions by board members?
San Miguel? So will there be folks from these agencies there on campus, or is this more of a resource center?
Good question. I think it's one of the questions that were asked earlier, and I did take note of it, and I can answer those. But over that, it's actually twofold. It is a resource center, but they will also bring services into that hub. So it's twofold. It's to provide our parents with a place that they can go to and get information concerning the various types of services that are out in LA County, but it's also bringing some of those services into our community and having it be a hub for parents to go and get that particular service at Paramount High School.
And then this will be open to all families in the district, all students.
That is
Not just the high school.
That is correct. It's a hub. It's where we placed it, but it's for all students and parents in Paramount Unified School District.
Okay. Is there any cost to the family?
No cost. It's been amazing how, as I've been part of this, there's a lot of resources in LA County. It's connecting our parents to those resources that sometimes is a little bit more difficult. But I was blown away by how many services. Yeah, it's truly incredible. Now we have an opportunity to connect parents and students to those resources, and that's a big part of it, and also bring those resources right into Paramount so that our parents and our students can be serviced here, right here in our, right, they don't have to go anywhere to get this service.
So how will we make those connections for the families to reach out? Because you just mentioned earlier, like it's that connecting that the resources are there. How will the district move forward?
Well, there's a couple things that are built into the MOU, and one of them is that they're actually going to have an advisory committee, including our parents. So parents and community members are called upon to be part of this advisory committee, and this advisory committee will be used to both communicate out to our community and to hear from our community about what resources they want and need. So it's twofold. And we are, as the board, and if the board, and when the board approves it, then as I mentioned on our next steps, it's to create a communication plan that will go out to our community, to our schools, to our administrators, to our support staff, to make sure that that information is getting out to our stakeholders.
So then how will the, because you said it would be basically parents.
That's my question.
So how would we determine like who would take that role? Is it something like an application process, or just the first person that says, I want to do that? How would we go about that?
Is the county forming the committee?
It is part of the, it's part of one of the staffs. It's the staff that I mentioned, the community school program specialist. One of the roles in that program specialist is to develop and form an advisory committee. And so that's part of what Los Angeles County Office of Education is doing in training this staff member as to how to make sure they're going out and getting that community involvement, building that advisory committee, and the steps to do so. So there's training involved before they even come into our school district, that community school program specialist, onto how to make sure that they're bringing in and they're inclusive, and they're bringing those community members in to help look at what services are needed and to make sure that communication is getting out to our
It
community.
sounds like once we look at the MOU, that many of our questions may be answered, or
It helped me. So I do believe that, it says right here that strengthen and maintain a bridge between the school, opportunities for shared leadership and trust, and this can be done through the stakeholders group or a community school advisory board. So it's built into the functions and the role of that one position that LACO is training for and that LACO is helping to staff.
and then where on the campus are they preparing a room?
This is over in the administration building, right where the counselors are located and right where the social workers are located. So if you come into the admin building, not through the double doors where the parents come in, or that big entryway, it's located right to the right. I think it used to be the health area. So it's a really nice area. And the beauty of it is that you have all your support services there together. You have your counselors, You will have these people, if the board approves it, and then you will have your social workers all working together as a team, and that's a great asset for all of them.
Actually, at graduation, Dr. Perez asked me if I wanted to go see the room, and it is really, really nice. I'm very excited about it, and I think it'll be really great for us to have.
Great.
And then who's going to oversee the program from the district level? Is that you?
I think it will come out of our office, yes.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Any other questions? No? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Madam President, I wanted to share that, I think it was a year ago, we had at Progress Park a parent forum where we had our own teachers provided workshops to our parents and community. And Kim emailed me or texted me during the meeting to share that with me. So we're going to work together to provide another forum for our families so that I remember we even had babysitting and different topics for parents, not only of special education students, but all types of supports for our families. And our teachers did a beautiful job of delivering the training themselves. So we're going to work on that so that we could provide that again for our community.
And I'll work on the planning committee again if you need me.
Since you brought up the question about childcare, I know that there's families that do want to come to these meetings, but that have families and they don't want to leave them with other people. Do we have, or can we think about in the future somewhere where these kids could probably stay at, so the parents could come to these meetings? I know that the child will sit next to them, but then sometimes the child is anxious, want to go home or whatever, but the parent really wants to be involved. Is there anything we can look at?
The closed session room, my office. Bring in toys.
No, I'm just saying, because as we go on, I can see now parents are really wanting to get involved. As you see today, we had special ed parents. That was awesome to see more parents come out and be involved within their own community and have a say about their child's education.
I know that, I know when we offer these trainings and workshops, it's really, when parents see that we offer babysitting services, they're very appreciative of that. Yeah, and food. So that work, we will continue to be committed to, obviously, yes.
I had something too before we close. In looking back on the videos, I'm noticing, and I had a phone call from someone in the community, noticing that we're not responding to the questions that people are asking us because we don't have addresses. We respond to some folks who will give us their addresses. I'd like to suggest that you prepare responses to the comments, to the questions that are being asked, and let our president respond back to them at the next board meeting and make it part of her report. I think it's important to let the folks know that some of the things that are being asked of us, we need to respond to them so that people don't just hear, a question without hearing the answer. So our president could respond back at the next meeting if you could prepare.
You mean the ones where we
information.
don't have addresses to respond to them?
Actually, for any of the questions, because we send out letters, but there's still not a response that we can give to the community so that they hear what the response is. The person who gave an address gets a response, but the community doesn't hear it. And I've had people ask me about that. So I'm just wondering if that could be something we could add. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great idea.
That's a fantastic idea. And that's what happens. We do get questions and suggestions from community members that do see this. And then that's our job to bring it here and ask, and that's a great, thank you very much, Board Member Hanson. Absolutely. Absolutely. Appreciate you bringing that up to us.
Sure. So we'll prepare it, because the questions and answers, and then I'll prepare something for our president to report out.
I've been going through the videos, and I have a list of things that people have asked questions about. And even though someone may have gotten a letter, it doesn't mean that we responded to the community with an answer. So it would be nice if people would know, what the response would have been. So I'll share the list, and then you guys can use that one to, follow up on, or
Absolutely.
build your own or whatever.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes. So if you want to repeat, hopefully he can turn it up when she's,
I forgot about that, because when you're watching the video, all you hear is shuffling papers. And so I thought, I'm just going to turn this off. No, what I requested was that the board president respond back to the questions that are asked from the previous meeting, because even though folks who get letters because they've given our address, we still are not responding to the questions that are brought forward. So I'm suggesting that we have the superintendent prepare the responses, and our board president could read them at the next meeting. That's what I was trying to say.
and I agree to that. So thank you. Any other comments, suggestions, discussions? Nope. Okay. So none. I will adjourn at, is that 7:51 PM. I have a motion to adjourn at 7:51 PM.
I'll move.
Vivian Hanson made the motion, Sonia De Leon second. Any discussions, any questions? No? So none. May I have all those in favor? Aye. 4-0. Thank you. Do you have an extra one? Because I
Did you work today?
Yeah, where'd you work? I worked at a continuation school.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
How was that?